Tanessa, welcome to Spark TV. I'm so excited to have you.
Hey, thank you for having me on. It's going to be a good conversation.
I know I can tell. I can always tell in the lead up before we hit record whether it's good, we're going to be chatty or not chatty. So amazing. Let's start out by just telling everyone who you are and what you do.
Yeah, my name is Tanessa Shears. I'm an entrepreneur and a mama too. I got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old right now. And I run an online health consulting practice. And my work is with high performing, successful entrepreneurs. And what I do is with a combination of wearable technology. So I got an Aura ring on. If you've ever heard of an Aura ring, it's
Nice.
my favorite. So I use wearable technology and coaching to help create systems for our health the same way we would create systems in our business. So things that are based on data and not emotions, things that fit in with the system and it doesn't feel like it's another thing you're piling on your plate. So that's what I do. Outside of that, like our families we're obsessed with freedom. And so we spend anywhere from 4 to 6 months per year traveling to somewhere warmer, as we were talking about earlier. I'm not a winter person, I've discovered. And so we pack up the family and we go somewhere warmer every winter for a couple of months. And that's kind of just what life looks like lately.
Oh my gosh, I love it so much. And I love the idea that you base the health data or the systems on data. So,
Mhm.
a lot of times when we're feeling a little bit run down or like, not our best selves, we just turn to, oh, well, I've just got to eat more vegetables and exercise more. And then, hopefully things will be okay. So I'm super
Mhm.
intrigued. What do you see in business owners? So when business owners come to you, where are they usually at? And what are
Yeah.
kind of some of the steps that you sort of help coach them through?
Yeah. So stressed out and not sleeping well. I
Oh,
think
okay. So you're talking to me. Great.
it's so good. So, I mean, here's the thing. Most entrepreneurs will come in and say, my sleep is fine. And I want to work on the sexy stuff, which is give me a
Oh,
diet plan, tell me the exercise. Like that's what we think fitness is, right? But
yeah.
I think like those things are important. But what I think is lacking in just the self care space in general is focus on resilience and
Mm.
our ability to build our capacity to the ebbs and flows of stress that come with business. Because I mean, we all know the story of the entrepreneur that ends up in burnout. And when I really start to use the data, what I'm able to show my clients is like, hey, if you do these couple small things, notice how that affects the data and in turn, how that affects your business. And the data that I like to focus on is a lot different than the data we're used to getting from wearable trackers. Like we're used to like closing the rings, getting the steps, all the things on the watches where I
Mhm.
like to focus on data that supports recovery and resilience because I think as entrepreneurs, I think for the most part, we're very driven, focused, we move forward. But where we lack is that ability to be able to give ourselves permission to rest or
Mm.
know that not all time has to be productive. And so teaching us how to slow down so that we can get more out of the hours we do spend in our business.
Oh my God, I love this so much. So I was just telling you that I'm off on a holiday to Canada in a week, and I literally have my 7 days left before I leave list. And I currently have this crazy like neck pain, and I think the two are related. I think I'm like trying to force myself to be as productive as I can in the next 7 days. And I'm like, I literally sat down last night and I'm like, I think you are just piling so much on your plate for no reason. And all of the things on this list will be there when I get back. It's not like it's all self imposed urgency. And like having that physical reaction, I was like, wow, I think like we can't separate ourselves from our business. We really do have to give ourselves that time to rest and recuperate so that we can. I love how you just said that so that we can actually be more productive in the time that we're working.
Right. And I always think like let's say you spend 6 hours at your desk. Like, wouldn't it be nice if you could get that 6 hours of stuff done in 5? Because we've all done that
Oh,
thing where like you're like, yes, emails at the end of the day, because that's all I have brain power for. We just plan for the energy crash instead of questioning, like, why am I accepting this as normal? Like, this isn't normal. And so it's so fascinating. And I that's here's the thing. If we start with things like exercise and food, like that's all great.
yeah.
But like, what is coming off your schedule to make time for that? And most entrepreneurs are like, no, I'll jam it in. It'll work. And
Oh
my
yeah, I
entrepreneur,
now work on the treadmill. I'm
Of
like, I've
course.
combined it
You're
too.
like, I can do it all. But what I like to do instead is really think like, okay, well, what if we just got your brain working better? Because I'm a believer
Mm.
that your brain is the best asset you have in your business. It is way more important than your products, your services, your whatever it is. Because without your brain, you probably can't perform those services. You can't be a visionary. You can't execute on anything. You can't be creative. So I protect my brain because if I can be clear and focused instead of foggy and lethargic, and I can get through my days of stuff in 5 hours instead of the 6 hours usually. Now you have this hour at the end of your day, and you could continue working, or you could put your exercise there. And this is how I like to start creating space for health. It's about creating systems. If you can get your brain working better, it frees up time to do the other stuff instead of cramming it all in this perfect plan. We get 2 weeks, everything blows up, we quit again, and we're like, why can't I do it? I've never been able to do it before. What's going to make it different this time?
Oh my God. And I love that you just said that as well, because I feel like we've all tried. I feel like
Mhm.
we've all really tried to rest and do good things for ourselves and look after ourselves and tick the self-care boxes. But I think it's all been based on, yeah, what is self-care? Running a bath because I'm so burnt out and sitting in a bath for an hour and reading a book isn't going to fix the however many years I've been like thrashing myself at work.
Right. And on top of that, like that's, I think, what's missing. Like you go on
Mhm.
Instagram and you see self care and you see the bubble baths running, and you're like,
Yes.
I've got toddlers. There's never a bath in peace anymore. There's nothing relaxing about that. So I think the conversation really needs to be like, okay, when I'm in the moment and someone decided to leave a nasty comment on my YouTube channel or
Mhm.
whatever it is like that, and I'm spinning, or a client sends me a message and I'm spinning, and you know those days when you lose half the day just to spinning out, you just can't ever get back into it. Like, I think what we really need is to build our resilience in those moments and understand, like, okay, I'm spinning. What can I do to bring my brain back online? Because I'm not
Yes.
hopping in a bubble bath at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday,
Yeah,
right?
well, I've done that. Let me tell you, it
No,
doesn't
yes,
fix it.
some
It
of us
doesn't fix
can for
it.
sure. But I don't think that's the default. You're like, I should
No.
probably eat my way out of this, or I should
Oh
probably
yeah.
overwork my way. Like that's not our default response. Is like maybe I should care for myself. It's usually like I should. How do I get rid of this terrible, terrible feeling?
Yeah, absolutely. Or I can work through tears. That's fine.
Yeah, and you're just like, this email sucks. Like you're trying to perform. I don't like those days. So I've like really leaned into like building up our resilience so that we don't fall apart. And it's not just those type of things. I mean, like
Yeah.
maybe you had a kid that was up all night sick, or your dog threw up all night, or XYZ. You had an unexpected consult that popped on your schedule, or something like that.
Mhm.
Through your day off, like how do you have the mental resilience and the energy to be able to redirect back to the plan? Right.
Do you have any tips for somebody that is kind of drowning right now and
Mhm.
needs a few things to like get them somewhere where they can start making actual progress or contacting someone like you or starting to
Mhm.
develop a plan? Are there any like little tips someone can use to kind of just get themselves out of drowning mode?
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about like a real time stress management strategy.
Yeah.
So I use this. Honestly, I've had doctor's appointments I've used this at. I've been waiting in line, stressed out using things like this with my kids. It's been brilliant. So it's called the cyclical side. So picture
Mm.
this. Have you ever seen a kid cry really hard and then they wind down and at the end they go,
Yes.
that's a built-in reflex to calm, self-soothe. So
Mm.
you can actually use this to help slow your heart rate. And it looks like this. So if I was in a moment, I actually do this if I wake up at night and the to-do list starts rolling at 3 a.m. in the morning and you're
Mhm,
like,
mhm,
now,
mhm.
really? This works. It works all the time. So I would take a really deep inhale, as deep as I can through my nose. And I'll demo this after. When I'm at peak inhale, I sneak in more air, even though I feel like I'm expanding my lungs. And then I'm going to breathe out as slow as I can through my mouth. So it kind of sounds like this. Really long exhale. And here's why it works. When you breathe out longer than you breathe in, your heart rate slows down.
Hmm.
So this is why I love box breathing. That's, 4 seconds
Yes.
in, 4 seconds out, but it keeps your heart rate the same. I want to slow the nervous system down in a moment of fight or
Oh,
flight. So
yes.
if you're ever in a situation where you're just like, I'm, I can't right now, 3 to 5 of those, and you will notice all of a sudden your brain comes back online and you can actually start problem solving properly, because problem solving from a place of fight or flight never goes well. Writing
Mhm.
emails from fight or flight never goes well. So get your body calmed, calm your nervous system. So that's one of the first things I like to do in the moment for sure.
I love that. That is amazing. And it's so accessible for
Mhm.
everybody, which I love
Mhm.
as well. So how
Mhm.
did you even get into all of this?
I know, it's not fun.
It's
So
so good. I
I
love
opened
it.
I opened my business 10, it's been just over 10 years, 10 years February we hit. And I started out as a personal trainer and I was like, yeah,
Oh,
fitness,
cool.
that's where it's at. I had a 6-figure personal training business within the first year. It was amazing. I loved it. I was also doing 33 client hours per week, not including the,
Wow.
yeah, that's what happens when you're 24. You can do that.
Yeah, you're like, I can do this. I can take over the world.
I know, but then I was
Oh,
like, if I want to have kids one day, maybe I should like, this isn't gonna work. Like, I'm gonna be drained all the time, or like, this isn't the kind of the life I see. And so I started playing around about in 2015 with the idea of like, what would online look like? And naturally, I poked my toes around in there for a little bit, but it wasn't until about 2017 when I started getting a bit of traction. And that's because I started adding in food as a component. So I was like, you're right. It's not just exercise, it's food. And I was like, cool, cool, I got this. And it was about 2019 when I was like, hey, wait a second, all my clients are entrepreneurs. What is going on? And they're like, we came to you to fit in our jeans, but I'm sleeping better. My mood is better, all of it. I'm more productive at work. And I was like, great. So in 2019, then when I got pregnant, I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to be that lady that takes all the steps with my pregnant belly. Nobody told me that the pelvic pain was going to completely sideline me. So I was playing around with my Fitbit that I bought myself to track my steps. And I was like, oh, this thing tracks sleep. Interesting. But it's a liar. It says I get 6.5 hours sleep, but my sleep is fine. I get 8 hours. But little did I know that the time you spend in bed is not the same as time asleep. And through this evolution, I began biohacking my sleep on Instagram Live. Like, if I'm going to do this, what happens to my sleep data this week? And it just became such a thing that I became known for, that now that's like one of the biggest pillars of my business. So it's not just exercise and food, it's really looking at sleep and that resilience recovery metric and how that plays into our ability to function as in our business.
yeah, that
So,
is incredible. And I love the journey as well. It's
mm,
actually your business has been based on a curiosity to solve something for yourself.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, nothing will show you how important sleep is than getting a puppy or having kids.
Yeah. Well,
I
that's
don't
where
have never had a I've never had a
I
puppy, but a lot of my clients have, and they say it's very similar. But like, it's just that, like, oh my gosh, my brain doesn't work. And there's this crazy thing that happens called baseline resetting with your sleep. When you haven't been getting adequate sleep for long enough, your brain just goes, let's call this normal. Let's call this normal. And you don't realize that your brain wasn't functioning like it was with better sleep. And so we say we're fine, but it's not
Mhm.
really until you get a good week or so of getting consistent sleep. Then you're like, oh, wait a second. This is how my brain's supposed to work. And so I
Yeah, it's
love,
like, oh, I can think again.
yeah, yeah. And so that's what I like to build on, because we can't always, especially if you're used to 6 hours of sleep, like jumping into 8 hours, you're like, no, that causes more time. So I'm
Yeah.
always a big fan of like, sleep is free. You're doing it anyways. Let's make it better, right? Let's start
Oh,
there.
that's
Let's
so
just make
good.
it better. I mean, like, if I can have good sleep, great sleep, when I was being woken up 4 times a night by a baby, we can do it as entrepreneurs. We can do it.
I love it. It is so good. And I just love the idea. You've said it a couple of times, like we don't need to accept where we're at as normal. There's just, you are so spot on. You're like, yeah, I always feel tired at, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or, oh, I
Mhm.
always need a cup of coffee to wake up in the morning, or I always need this. Like, that's just how I am. It's like, okay, why don't we try and make that better?
Well, I think it's because like we look around at our friends and everyone is exhausted and
Yeah.
tired. And it's kind of like, oh, well, that's normal. Like everyone's tired. It must be because of X, or it must be because of
Mm,
Y. It's a circumstance in my life. And there are definitely some circumstances that do create that 100%. But I
mm,
like to look at what are the ones that I can have some cause and effect over.
yeah.
Right. And that's things just like what my brain's doing while I'm sleeping, what I'm putting in my mouth, how I'm moving my body, and not all at the same time. That's a layering process. Like, what can I do this week that is sustainable and learn to build on that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, why don't we? It's interesting that as entrepreneurs, we attack our business with that mentality, and have all of the plans and the project management tools and the this and the to-do lists and, sprints and all of this stuff. I'm like, what if we like carved out a little bit of that attitude and energy for ourselves and our bodies and our energies and our brain?
Yeah, when I work with clients, that answer usually comes up in that our productivity and our self-worth are so intricately linked
Yes.
that for a lot of us, the idea of rest is not productive.
Mm.
Therefore, we are not adding value. Therefore, it is not worthy. We are not worthy of that. And so, this conversation, especially with clients that really identify with perfectionism, we're having to unwind productivity and self worth, right? Because and even many of the clients I've spoken to, like the clients that have trouble sleeping, it's like, I didn't get enough done. I didn't do a good job today. What might happen to my business? All the things I got to do tomorrow. I'm behind. I'm not doing enough. This isn't enough. I'm not. It's this conversation that keeps our brains awake. And I really start to look at our schedule. And the fascinating thing is, I'm always like, well, what would have been enough today? And they're like, well, you should see my to-do list. I was like, but
Yeah.
you can't, if you show up to your day with like a 30 things on a to-do list and you start working off the top, of course it never feels like you're doing enough. So
Yeah.
then our brain goes, oh, but I've learned this strategy called pick your top 3 things you want to move the needle on for that day. I had a client do that and never got through them. And I was like, okay, cool. How long does thing number 1 take? Hour and a half. How long does thing number 2 take? An hour. How long does thing number 3 take? An hour. Okay, so we're at 3.5 hours. How long did you have to do that? An hour and a half. So we just,
That
so
is
no
so
wonder,
funny.
again, like this is why we don't feel like we have enough done. Like I think like
Yeah.
it comes down to one of the pillars that I love to teach on is this idea of time freedom. And if we don't have a solid grip on how we use our time, there is going to be no safeguard for our health. Our health is always the thing that we're like, it's a launch, the workouts can come back next week. It's a launch, it's takeout this week. It's a whatever, or busy season, new product, onboarding team, whatever it is, right?
There's
And
always something.
there's always something. And then we get into
Mm.
this whole when then thing. When this happens, then I'll get around to it. Then I'll get around to it, right? And we end up just like
Mm.
overwhelming ourselves. I'm not enough. It's never behind, but I'll finally feel better when I get to this goal, but that didn't feel as good as I wanted. It's okay. I'm just going to push the milestone just a little bit, just a little bit. And I think we really just have to ask ourselves, like, when is enough? Enough. Like, what are we doing this for? Like, what is that point at which we go, okay, this is what I was aiming for. This is, if anything more than this is a bonus, but now it's time for my bandwidth for my life to come back.
Yeah. This is such an incredible conversation because it extends. I feel like the enough conversation extends to happiness as well,
Mhm.
and people often delay happiness until they've reached a specific goal. To your
Mhm.
point, that goal comes and we're still not happy and we push the goalposts. I think it's really interesting to reframe our perception over life and that we can be enough and happy
Mhm.
whilst we're here, whilst
Yes.
we're on the journey,
Yes.
whilst we're completing the tasks.
I 100% agree. And I always say, like, okay, how do you think you're going to feel when you accomplish this milestone, whether it's revenue, number of people on your team, whatever it is? How do you think you're going to feel? Oh, I'll finally feel freedom, or I'll finally feel successful, or I'll finally feel accomplished. And I'm like, okay, cool. Your goal is to create freedom, successful, and accomplished now with your thinking. Because if you show up and you reach your goal and you have the same brain you have right now, your goal is going to feel the same because your same brain is going to say the same things there. And it's
Yeah.
still not going to feel like enough. And you're going to feel disappointed. And so you'll go goal chasing again. So if you can create that now and you can feel freedom now, then you know hitting the goal is going to feel just as good as you imagined.
Oh, I love that. It's so interesting. I often, in my self pep talking, when I think about like, okay, if I'd achieved all of my goals, what would my dream day look like? And I'm like, oh, I'd do yoga and I would read and I would do this. And I'm like, okay, all of that is accessible to you right now. None of that actually hinges on hitting any of these goals that we have. So why not live your dream life right now? Why are you holding that
Mhm.
back from yourself? It's almost like we punish ourselves. Like, until I hit this, and this, I will not do the things that give me joy or look after myself or the happiness or the enough or the whatever it is. But I think we've got it so backwards. And I
Mhm.
just love, circling all the way back to the conversation at the start of the recording when we were talking about, training our brains, exactly that. If we're in this fight or flight, if we're stressed, if we're overwhelmed, if we're thinking all of these thoughts, we're not going to be productive enough to hit those goals. So it's like
Mhm.
we've got to start where we think we want to end up.
Yes, I completely agree. It's like, how do you want to go through? At what point? What was going to happen that was suddenly going
Yeah.
to change everything, right? And I think it's because we think like, well, if I'm going to take care of my health, like, where am I going to buy all this time that I need to
Yeah.
do? Like, it's a lot. And like, I think this is where I love this idea. And this isn't my concept, but it's called a minimum baseline. And it's
Mm.
like, okay, what can you achieve no matter what, even on your craziest week? And so often I'll start clients, they're like, I want to do 5 1-hour workouts a week. I was like, how about 3 15-minute walks? And they're like, what? I was like, can you do that? They're like, well, that's silly. That just feels like a waste of time. I was like, yeah, but if you're in a year from now and you've gone on 3 15-minute walks per week versus 2 weeks of doing an hour workout every day and then falling off for another 6 months, will you like who you are better then? Will you know that you have your back better then? Will you have better integrity with yourself then? Will you be the type of person who's like, yeah, I do what I say I'm going to do? And you can do more. You can do the workouts, but start by setting those baselines as things that are actually achievable during all seasons of life. And then look at that as your baseline instead of perfection.
Yes, I love that so much. We have this vision in our mind that we'll run a marathon every day, with zero training. Oh yeah, that's where I need to start because I'm an overachiever. I
Yep.
love that idea of starting with, okay, what is realistic, what is achievable, and that is okay. It doesn't have to be the, I've, been an athlete for my whole life kind of end of the
Right?
spectrum. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Another really good riff kind of on that same concept is like I think intuitively we all know that phones and screens before bed disrupt our sleep. I think we know that. But then the alternative of like an hour with no screens, like that sounds terrible.
sounds
That's when I do
terrifying. Yeah.
my doom scrolling, right? That's when I get my dopamine. And so I was like, I have this thing that I like to share. It's called the experimenter's mindset. And think
Oh,
about this. Like, let's go back to grade 8. And it was all like, okay, the hypothesis is if I don't have as much screen time before bed, I will sleep and feel better. So let's test the hypothesis, but let's commit to 15 minutes and only a week. Because my brain can get behind a week. It's hard to get behind forever,
yeah.
especially when I don't know what it's going to feel like or be like. So I'm like, okay, brain, we're going to do 15 minutes and we're going to get a week. And if at the end of the week I hate it, I go back and I've lost nothing and I'm already currently living what is technically the worst case scenario. I go back to
Yes.
what I was doing. But what if I like it? What if it opens space for me and to wind down and I sleep better and I feel better? Now I've had both experiences and now I can actually make a decision. And from there, you decide, do I want to keep it? Do I want to toss it? Or do I want to layer on? If you do a tiny experiment like that every week, this is where your life looks different in a year. This is where your life looks different in 6 months.
Mm. I love it. And again, it's the business owner's mindset. We do this in our business. We test a
Yeah,
new marketing channel. Okay,
like
let's
a
test
Facebook
something
ad.
different. Yeah, totally.
Right? I always say, like, you wouldn't run a Facebook ad and it flopped and you scratched the whole thing and put a whole new ad up. No, you just changed the headline or just changed the copy or the creative. Or maybe the data says ads good, click throughs good, landing page isn't converting. You look at the data and you change one thing, one small thing, get data, then change. It's not like this free for all of chuck it all out and start again in 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, or completely give up and go, oh well, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not looking after myself anymore. I'm not running that ad anymore. Like
Get to
it's
heck
that
with business.
yeah, totally. We don't quit when one thing doesn't work. We just try a new thing. I love that. It's such a good frame on
Mm,
looking after ourselves. Oh my God, incredible. Okay, so let's switch gears for a
okay.
second because you have been in business now, you said for over 10 years. That's full
Mhm.
on. That is a lot.
Mhm.
And it almost sounds like you've been in business. Like, have you ever had a career before that, or did you go straight into running businesses?
Does McDonald's count? I'm kidding.
Absolutely.
Actually, no, I was a swimming instructor. I taught aquafit classes and I
Yeah.
was a swimming teacher for like 7 years before that.
Oh my God, amazing. So then how did you like go from, okay, this is what having a job looks like, but I can start my own thing.
Mhm.
Was there a learning curve from the business side for you? So how's actually been running a business, learning the business side? I mean, you've obviously so passionate about your industry and niche and experimenting and layering on the product offerings. But what about that underlying business layer? Was that a learning curve? Did you take the same experimenting approach? I'm interested in how that journey's been.
Honestly, it was just really fun. I
Yeah.
worked for a big box gym for a
Mhm.
while and they they sat us all, I remember very clearly. They sat us all down at a meeting and they said, "You guys, if you want to be, this is a sales organization. If you want to be trainers, go somewhere else." And so six of us quit that week. And at the time, I mean, I was 24. Thank goodness I was living at home. But I remember I went to like some educational seminar on mutual funds or something like that at the time. And the woman says to me, she goes, "Well, why don't you open your own business?" And like, this was terribly naive of me, but I said, "But that's for older people." I, I thought business was for people in their 40s and 50s. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't see anybody in their early 20s like starting businesses. And she goes, "But you live at home. You don't have any bills. Like you're risk free. Like what do you have to lose? You go back to a box
Mhm.
gym. Like it's, you know?" And so and so at that point I was just like, okay. And it's cool. Like it's really cool when you document your process because you can start seeing the calendar had 2 clients in a week and then three. And the big thing I leaned into was what I think of as like referral trees.
Yeah.
I huge. Like I can point down to 2 clients who single-handedly at the top of the referral tree created 6 figures for me in a year. Like,
Wow.
so I
Yeah.
really leaned in for personal training to that. But it was really interesting. That came easy. Online was a whole different beast. That was like none of my skills apply. I'm an in people person. I connect really well. I can do in-person events, but online, I'm like, hello, where are the people?
Hello. Yeah, we're all feeling like that.
Right. And so,
Yeah.
you know, it's funny that was a lot of trial and error, a lot of $0 launches. What do people want? My messaging. And it wasn't until I really got into, I feel like the niche I am in now with entrepreneurs and connecting that with podcast interviews. That was
Ooh.
gold because
Yeah.
I feel like I love podcasts. It's such a great way to get a feel for someone
Mhm.
from like a like I'm watching, but we don't have to interact kind of thing. And like
Yeah.
I think like 98% of my business since 2020 has come from podcast interviews and just meeting great people along the way.
Oh my God, that's incredible. I love that. It's like, okay, business owners, entrepreneurs, how many podcasts do we listen to every day, right? Like it's
Right?
finding the channel that is where your customers are at. That's so smart. I
Yeah.
love that.
And it's just, and it was fun to do. I think that was important because I very much, I'm one of those people that's been with a business coach for forever up until this year when I decided to start hearing my own voice. And it was always like, get in the DMs, get in the DMs, get in the DMs. And
Mm,
like that works for some people. I just got icky feeling. I'm just like, that
yeah.
didn't work for me. But this, like conversations like this, fun, all the time fun. And I was just like, I'm just going to lean into what's fun and it's worked, thank goodness, because I was not a fan of cold DMs.
Oh my
Like I said,
God,
it
I
works for
know.
some people, but for me, I was just like that. I don't know. Maybe my rejection tolerance is a little low. But I was just like, I felt like defeated at the end of every day. It's like
No,
this
I
just fun.
I
Yeah.
absolutely love it because I feel like there's so many different sales and marketing channels on the planet. So you can find success in a lot of them. But yeah,
Mhm.
if you pick the ones that actually feel good, you'll actually show up and do more of them as well. I mean, I feel the same way. If anyone cold DMs me on Instagram, I know my feeling as the customer. I look at it and I'm like, ugh, you're about to sell to me. Like you can just tell. And half of
Yep.
them I delete and block.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, I don't want people to feel that way about me, so I'm not
Right.
going to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
leaning
felt the
into
exact
what
same.
feels good is a great idea.
Yeah, I agree. And I've been experimenting even now with like writing long form content
Cool.
because it was interesting. Because I battle a lot of like what we should do versus what
Mm.
I feel is authentic to me. And that clash, like I was in a lot of like very male dominant business programs where that was very much commonplace. And it's like, get the flashiest, craziest 7-second hook that will like stop people in their tracks. And I had a moment where I was like, but I don't know if I want to attract people that need a flashy, crazy hook to actually step into my world and be like, this is
Yeah.
valuable. So I've returned, I have like 45-minute podcast episodes. I have long written content because that's that's what attracts me when I'm
Mhm.
looking for something is I want to connect, I want to actually get value. I want to feel that slow down, which is what I talk about in my business. It's the ability to slow down. So I feel like inviting people into a world where they're like it's like a flash bang, like look over here, like
Yeah.
it's just it feels like it contrasts my message. And so I feel like having to like come to peace with that this can work too has
Yes.
been a challenge, and it's been something I've been embracing, and it's a slow process, but it feels good. It feels good.
Oh, I love this so much because I have this problem with social media. So I am very active on social media. I have clients that I manage their social media, but I am so anti the it's got to look this way. You've got to have the hook, you've got to have the this, you've got to have the that. And I'm like, that just feels crap, And I just when I
Especially
feel
when it's
up,
not authentic and
exactly.
sensationalized beyond what you're actually going to get from the click or the investment of time in reading the thing. It's like 4 ways you're magically never going to feel tired again. Like I can't
Yeah.
do it. I can't do
Totally.
it.
Exactly. And I'm like, and I often think to myself, well, maybe you're not going to go viral. And I'm like, maybe that's okay because I feel like so many people go viral and it makes zero impact in their business.
I had a reel go viral, and I think I gained like 4,000 followers over like a span of a week.
Mm,
But none of them were followers I would have chosen. And now my Instagram algorithm is a mess because most of
yeah.
these people are like, I mean, there's a bunch of wonderful people, but there's a bunch that don't run businesses, that don't really aren't into personal growth. It was just something that kind of poked a nerve in them and they left an
Yeah.
angry comment or something like that. But
Yeah.
like, I've just been like, I'd rather talk to 100 people that are like genuinely like, this is my person. I love
Yeah.
how this is communicated than trying to go viral because I saw that and it just didn't attract the right crowd. But like there are podcast interviews I've been on that I can credit at least 40,000 in business to.
Wow.
So
That's so good. It's such a good lesson. Lean into the things that feel good. Don't follow the tactics of the day.
yeah, because I think your audience can suss out. That's
Oh,
what I felt like
totally.
started happening. That I just was like, I feel it and I feel weird. So they probably feel weird. And we're just
Yeah.
sitting there weird together. And now
Oh,
I'm gonna try to DM you. It's just I can't do it anymore.
yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm here for
Oh,
friends. I'm here for friends. I'm here for sharing and value. And if something becomes, and I feel like it's such a better relationship to start with a client
yes.
or a customer, like in that place of like, you don't read weird energy. Like, no, don't be
Yeah.
weird. I don't want to be weirdo.
Yeah. I mean, it's so funny. It just reminds me so, and I have recently talked about this on the podcast, but because I do some one-on-one sales coaching, and this guy reached out, like he just booked a time in my diary, and I was like, so most of my stuff's with women, but I was like, whatever, it's all good. But he was like, I need you to teach me how to be a closer. I need you to teach me, and I'm like, well, I don't, that's not how I sell. I'm like, I'm the softest seller. I'm like, I will just talk to whatever amount of people I need to talk to so that I get the sales in the bottom of the funnel. And if I need to talk to more people, I will. And I'll just have amazing conversations and build great relationships. And if it's right for the person, it's right. And if it's not, no worries. They can just
Yep.
be in our world getting value. I'm like, there is
Yes.
no way on this earth that I'm going to be that person that's like, test close, this technique, close, close, close. I'm like, that just feels
Oh,
horrible. I don't want to spend my days doing that.
and I think, you know what's funny? I think, especially if you're marketing to other entrepreneurs, we all know about the
Yeah.
fake scarcity. We know about the fake
Yes.
deadlines. We know
Yeah.
about the, oh, well, if you don't sign up in the next 24 hours, the price goes up 4,000. Does it really? Like, does it have to? And like, also, like, we
Yeah.
have to take your credit card on the phone. Like, I've
Yeah.
been on the receiving end of all of those, and it's interesting. Like, I've been through a lot of good sales process and good coaches,
Yeah.
and I use all processes to be like, I don't like how that felt. I do like how that felt. And I think
Yes.
that's what creates such unique businesses, is where it's a reflection of how you like to be sold to and how you like to be coached and how you like to be talked to, right?
Oh my God, I love it. That is the best lesson. Okay, we could talk all day.
Yeah, we good.
But I always love to wrap up these podcasts with one last piece of advice.
Mhm.
So, reflecting on your time in business, what would be one last piece of advice that you would give to another woman to help her on her journey?
Your productivity is directly correlated to your energy. And I want you to think of your energy as the currency of your productivity. And so by cultivating your energy, whether that be through your sleep or giving yourself some time to do some cyclical size, it is a much more effective way to show up in your business and be productive than grinding and feeling exhausted and negating your health. And so I always just ask this question: if you could get your brain working 10% better, 10% faster, what would that manifest in your business? And start there.
Oh my God, you are absolutely incredible. Tanessa, thank you so
Thanks.
much for sharing your wisdom and your tips and your journey on Spark TV. I know the whole Spark community would have gotten a lot of value out of that. So thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Oh, thank you for having me.